as a game master, things can get very hectic in a game very, very quickly, especially when you have friends or even players who are just good at the game. When people start piecing together what feats and what skills and what spells work the most efficiently, you are going to run into problems with combat. And if you can't step up your combat, your games are going to feel a bit dull. So, I'm calling this series the How-To series, where I'm going to be covering specific monsters and how to run them at a higher level of gameplay. Now, this doesn't exclusively mean that these monsters can be run only in this way, but this is just a recommendation based on my personal taste. Today's episode, How-To Goblins. Now, you know Goblins as greedy, short-tempered, selfish, evil, and overall cruel creatures. They are short, thick-skulled, easily swayed to anger, but they excel in their speed, their numbers, their recklessness, their hit-and-run and otherwise sneaky tactics, and how clever they can really be when you upset them. To understand Goblin culture, and to understand the player's motivation in the game, requires information. If you've played with your group enough, you may know what your players are interested in, and you may know what they leave behind after a combat. Goblin culture is interesting. Goblins are selfish and gross, violent and reckless. What really makes goblins a problem in the fantasy realms is their sheer number and their quick access and use of violence to any situation. Like cockroaches but armed with bows and swords, they rise from the shadows and easily overrun settlements and otherwise unprepared parties, and wreak havoc swiftly. Traditionally, goblins are noted as basic enemies. They are the go-to easy enemy, like the slime in most fantasies. But if used correctly, they can be well organized and a wonderful mob monster for any level of party. But only if you use them correctly. Even veteran adventurers might find themselves bogged down and threatened by hundreds of organized and pesky goblins that are led by intelligent war leaders. And that's where the problem comes in. They need to be led. Goblins are normally stupid. But this isn't the case for all goblins. In fact, as of late, Mordekainen's Tomaphos has officially announced that goblins are now a playable race. They've always been mostly playable. You could play them as a monster race. But now it's official that, given enough time, goblins are becoming more and more common and more intelligent. An idea of forced evolution, as the smartest, strongest, and sneakiest of the goblins are escaping more and more difficult combats that they're put into, whether that's adventurers that are sent to exterminate them, or natural disasters, or even worse, magic. And in turn, these goblins that escape raise their young in ways with premeditated hatred for the pesky heroes that killed their friends and families. You can approach the lore and the history of your goblin creatures as you wish as the game master, making them as basic or as complicated as you want. But the more you really sit and think about these creatures, the more they offer you. Think of it in terms of other fantasy games, like World of Warcraft, where goblins are inventors and otherwise highly intelligent crafters and spellcasters who can stand along others at the top of the leaderboards of power. Or even Pathfinder and other tabletop games, where goblins can become intelligent or otherwise powerful enough to become legendary and renowned heroes in their own rights. Now, I'm not here to tell you to run every goblin as evolved creatures and have them swarm and take over the world and throw it under their boots. Although that would be really cool, actually. But more so, I'm here to help you as a game master to run these pesky little guys a bit more effectively inside and outside of combat, and use them to their fullest potential to even make your high-level players struggle. Now, the first thing to note is that goblins overall are weak and stupid little guys. Like, really think about a traditional goblin, and tell me it's not just a silly little guy fighting and drooling over the first piece of gold it finally gets its hands on. Organizing your monster's information is the first step to making them the most effective. If you want to really make use of them and really want them to punish your players, you're going to need a list, like the one I kind of use. I go in this order. Where are they at? How well off are they? What are they doing? What are they supposed to be doing? Who sent them? And what do they have on them? The first thing that always comes into mind for me is setting. Where are they at? Where's the party going to find them? Is this a cave infested with hundreds of them? Is this a plain where dozens of them are lying in wait in the tall grass? Or maybe they're in the city streets themselves during the shopping episode. Wherever your setting is, you need to know that these creatures have to have a why and a what they're doing. Why are they here? What are they doing here? Why are they in the shops? But I find that starting with location gives me a easier way of crafting everything else. It is just my way of organizing. Setting yourself a list and doing it in the order that you want to is all I'm suggesting. Now it's all about the details. Why are they here? Who sent them? And up until that moment, and every moment before, what have they been doing? To backtrack, goblins are so much more like a free slate than they give off, being so basic and flexible with their champions. You have so much to do with them. You can make them do just about anything with how evil, crafty, and quick they can act upon things. And you can power them up with cruel and tricky tactics, and cruel and evil allies, to make their overall usefulness even more potent. But when all else fails, you have to remember one goblin could multiply into hundreds of goblins over a few months, all of which now hate your party's guts. Now, follow me along for this example. The party, a few months prior, were sent to a cave to kill all the goblins in an area for a mundane reward, joking and boasting about how the little goblins they slashed and slung spells at were nothing but insects under their boots. Some goblins ran, and very few escaped. But those goblins who did remembered the party, and they told legends of them, these terrible, horrible, cruel adventurers, to their next clans. Months later, those clans run into the same party again, once again paid a mundane reward to kill goblins, get them out of the way. But the goblins were a little bit more prepared this time. They had heard legends of adventurers. But, once again, they find themselves far too outmatched to deal with a level 8 party. They fall like flies at their feet. No matter what their champions throw at them, and no matter how many numbers that they have, they're mowed down before the adventurers. But a few more escape. Now angry, scattered, and vengeful. The leftover goblins are the strongest, the fastest, nastiest goblins. They do everything they have to survive, including worshipping a horrible vampire who is very interested in these powerful adventurers. You said they can cast magic? You said they had items? Interesting. They trade this information of the adventurers to the vampire. In exchange, they are sent out in raiding parties, quietly, secretly at night, and they are allowed to keep all the shinies they want, all of them. But the vampire says, no killing, no, just stealing. Information he wants, not blood. Not yet. And while the goblins gather more information on the party, like where they live, what spells they like to use most, maybe what resistances they have. Every so often, maybe the party will see a small band of goblins, but goblins are common in this area, and they've killed plenty in their time. What's a couple more? The day comes, months later, and the vampire is ready. The goblins are ready. The trap is set for the party. As boastful as ever, they waltz right up to the vampire's abode, challenging his undead guards and walking over them with ease, their arrogance leading them onward. Carefully. They had planned for their undead fanged friend. Magical items. They're level 11. They're powerful, renowned. They have friends, information about this vampire lord. And as he greets them in the courtyard, their magic items ready, they sling their speeches, hurl insults, and initiative is rolled. But as suddenly as the combat starts, the vampire melts away. An illusion, and the courtyard torches extinguish. Now, dozens of goblins jump from the bushes. Normally, this is a fight so easy they could have done it in their sleep. They fire off cantrips and slash out attacks easily, one-shotting most if not all of the goblins. But this was never meant to kill them. Oh, no. The goblins around them, the ones hiding in the brush, with camouflage, reveal war machines, brutal and horrible ballista, net launchers with chains, animals in cages, wargs infused with vampirism, hungering for blood and starved for days. The combat that began so smoothly instantly turned sour for the party as the goblins and the vampire plan on killing them all this night. With their careful preparations and hatred fueling their actions, this has turned a simple goblin fight into something so much more. So, what is this example really telling you? From my perspective, the goblins are a part of the story the entire time. They're broken up and killed multiple times, and by this way, the party accidentally lets out the ones that live and are able to reproduce and tell the tale of these adventurers. This is important because the party actually knows these goblins. Maybe they have a specific flag, or a single person like a commander who escaped with like a scar or otherwise important marking to identify them. Using the party's shortcomings against them in the long run makes for this wonderful reveal against the party in the future. But without a leader, a real leader, goblins will just revert to their primal and barbaric nature, rather than kill the party members. Which me and you know would just get all of them killed. So, no matter how smart goblins can be, they need a little help. Now, there are goblin shamans and chieftains who have a high enough base stat total intelligence to do what the vampire did. And they are wise enough to actually know to not attack the party until the time is right, to set a trap, to outsmart them. Feel free to use whatever monster works best for you. Organize your information. So, the survivors, as cunning as they were, approach a terrible leader in this instance, someone so much more refined than them, in age and strategy. They offer them something. What do goblins want? Well, they want shinies, and they want death to these ugly adventurers, who are, just so conveniently, a thorn in the side of this bigger, badder monster. A wonderful idea is that the monster can be as simple or as difficult as you want. Being something like a dragon isn't uncommon. Red dragons enslave goblins all the time to do their bidding. But what if goblins came up to a dragon and offered servitude in exchange for killing a party? As long as you have the idea of these goblins staying in the foreground or the background of the main story, that's the idea. Keeping them in the loop, keeping them on the table until the rest of your plans come to fruition. Having it be logical, a good explanation of why these groups are teaming up against the adventurers needs to be done. It needs to be set up. The stage needs to be set. A suggestion is that you should really think about what the goblins want more. Do they want vengeance, or do they want their freedom? If they really, really, really want the adventurers dead, they will hyper-focus on that, no matter how ugly their conditions get. A vengeful goblin may never forget the ones that hurt them in such a way. Determine how to set up the party for failure. What kinds of things make the goblins mad enough to devote their entire bloodline against the party? Maybe the party stole their precious idol of their god. Maybe they felled their dragon overlord. What sparked this hatred in the first place? Now, all of this aside, this isn't to say you can't run them in the traditional manner of wild and overwhelming force, uncontrolled tides of bodies, finally gathered together to take the realm by sheer number. Or maybe, elite goblin teams. Parties of goblins small enough to be swift and effective assassins, but large enough to gank outside threats that their brethren don't have the range of damage or lethality to deal with. Other ways you could run goblins are wild, running into them as barbarian tribes. Each of them have a level in barbarian. Now that would be crazy. Party tactics. Maybe each of them has a class. Maybe all of them are better than your party. Minions. What if they are working under somebody? Like I suggested with the vampire. Magic infused, where magic has melded itself into these creatures' DNA and has enhanced them in some way, maybe granting them even more intelligence, or making them faster or stronger than normal, which would make a horde of them even more deadly. Whatever direction you take with your goblins, just make sure you're organizing your events. Like, why are they here? What do they have on them? What are they doing? And who sent them? Think about it more. Think about, why do they have that stuff on them? Do they have their normal gear? Have they looted magical weapons? What if they're creative? What if they've made war machines or trebuchets? Do they have mounts? Can they cast spells? Look, goblins love looting, and that makes it super convenient for them to have something powerful that they probably shouldn't have in the first place, like a scroll or a wand, that they can't use very well. They just sort of spam it because it makes everything go boom, and nobody else wants to mess with them when they can just say a word and something goes boom. I love goblins as a game master, and although they're the default basic monster to most, they act as infantry and otherwise fodder to many other armies. I think you can really, really use them in a diabolical way if given the right inspiration.
If streaming games, playing D&D, talking about all things nerdy, and even embarrassing myself on live is good enough for you, well, maybe check out my content. And thanks for watching this one. I really appreciate it. If you need to find me, go ahead and look at my links down below, and maybe check out some of my other videos on TikTok and Twitch.